I'm telling you, those time moves slowly when you're stuck in bed. And my parents could come visit me, for a half hour and say, hey, we got other kids, we got business. Hope you're going to be okay tonight. So, the things I was interested in reading, studying, thinking about, it was very important that it was my thing. So it was awful being at the hospital, but it wasn't nearly as awful because I wasn't relying on my parents. Like, what are we going to do tonight? What are you going to do, Dad? What are we going to do? It was more like I was doing my thing, and I just kind of continued it right on through. So that helped kind of fight through those times.
Well, it sounds, since you were constantly playing against older people, that you might have not gotten a sense of how good you were getting at sports. But what was there a point in time when you were going to be playing virtually just against your age group that you realized that you had aptitude in any of the sports?
Yeah, it's well said, Danny, because you really it was nice. It was masked from me. I was playing at a very high level. My cousin, for instance, I would compete with the most if I were around him, and my next-door neighbor. It's almost parallel situations. The guy that I competed with when we got 4 or 6 or 8, whatever the event was, basketball, baseball, football, they would pair me up with a guy who's 2 years older than me. And both those people I'm talking about, my cousin and my neighbor, ended up being starting players in high school. And my cousin was a very good quarterback and basketball player. I mean, he was a star. And yet I was competing against him my whole life. I wasn't winning very often when I was going against him. But you're right. I didn't really know. So when I finally got a chance to play Little League, things weren't in a hurry back then. It's probably 7 or 8 years old. And even then, getting in organized sports rather than just in the backyard took a while to adapt to it. So I probably say, 9 or 10 years old when I really started playing basketball in addition to baseball in organized fashion. Then I started having success and being better, and my teams usually won, and I realized that I had a lot of control if we won. I was the catcher on the baseball team, and I love team sports, Danny, and in basketball, I love the fact that can you make everyone else around you better? I could shoot, but can I make a great pass that gets you your favorite shot? You don't even know what your favorite shot is when you're 11-year-old. I'm the idiot who was thinking, I know what Danny's favorite shot is. I'm going to get him the ball there. And I'm going to tell them, you're good, you can rip it, and build their confidence. So, when I started actually, about 9 or 10 years old, you could see that things were going very well. I didn't know which sport I was best at. I was lucky enough that I was more of a generalist, kind of good at everything and not dominant in anything. So there was no hint in my heart or obviously from my parents or any coaches to go, you need to focus only on this sport or that sport.
And then people really didn't do that much.
They didn't do it much. It wasn't tempting, but I wouldn't have been the guy
that
I don't think they would have tapped the shoulder on. I was just good enough to be good, but not a prodigy. It's like, okay, you need to play all the sports.
But you would end up playing and starting in high school basically from your sophomore year on in all 3 sports, right?
Yeah, it was a great experience. Anytime you get a chance to play varsity high school sports, Danny, I think that just gives you a giant boost of confidence. I have 4 kids. I've seen them go through it now, and I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be sports. It can be anything. Make the play, be on the speech debate team. There's plenty of activities. My thing's sports, but I saw it with my kids, and I realized myself that when you just had a different level of purpose. You weren't there just going through adolescence and whatever temptations or fun things you had, silliness. You suddenly were going to be watched by a number of people. That's going to be reported on in the paper. And I mentioned my freshman year, my football season went very well, Danny. We started winning. And that's the first time my 7th and 8th grade, we weren't that good at Goddard. But in 9th grade, we had a really nice coach. We were undefeated, and we were in our second to last game.
Was this like junior varsity or
freshman
football?
Freshman football.
Okay.
And there was no temptation to bring kids up back then.
Right.
Up. So I was focused in on freshman football, and then I got my leg broken, completely busted in half on a hit. So I was out the last game of the year. We finished off undefeated. No basketball. I limped around on the freshman baseball team. Yeah, I was out there, but, participating, not stealing any bases or just a total non-factor. So here I was at the most important time. We're getting ready to high school. I didn't have a super sense of urgency because I still thought maybe my junior or senior year.
Right.
But going into the summer of between freshman and sophomore year, I had no confidence at all. Look at me, I'm an athlete, because I had just been laid out,
Right.
and
Missed
I was
2
mostly, I can
seasons
beat you in
basic-
any crutches event you ever want to play. I mean, I can do crutches with no feet and climb stairs. I can do all kinds of tricks. You know, I've spent almost 2 years of my life on crutches. When you combine a knee injury in college or that broken leg in my freshman year, so I'm coming out there my sophomore year, and I just catch a break that there's really no quarterback, even though there's a ton of seniors ready to play some pretty high-level football. Goddard wasn't great. They're a 500-like team. My sophomore year, they needed a quarterback for some reason, and I had the greatest coach I've ever seen. Dennis Cavalier was my coach, and he saw something in me, and he believed in me more than I believed in myself, and boom, I was the starting quarterback my freshman year. So it was the first real sport I was involved with since I got hurt the year before. And you've grown a lot now, you know, between
Right.
your freshman and sophomore year. And things went well. We lost the first game, but after that we rolled and went undefeated the rest of the year.
What style of football did you play? Did you throw the football, 7 or 8 times or more than that?
Yeah, you know, 7 or 8 might be fair, but it probably closer to 10 or 15. But we didn't need to throw back then. It was option football.
Right.
Mostly tons of decision-making, even on inside run plays, veer plays, outside option plays. So the quarterback got to be involved a lot. And I also was starting in defense as well my sophomore year. So I was very fortunate to be able to play both. And then when that season ended, I walked over to basketball. And again, just a big break that the sequencing of what was going on at Goddard, they didn't have a point guard. So I became the starting point guard on the basketball team. And then it replicated for a third time at the baseball. They didn't have a shortstop. And I suddenly became the shortstop. And so I was able to participate.
So you were the stereotypical quarterback, shortstop, point guard.
Yeah. And then the other funny thing is that, you know, Roger Staubach, Danny, you know, you've heard me talk about him way too much. About he's kind of the guy that I looked up to when you think about a pro figure or something wearing number 12. Well, I wasn't so stuck on number 12, except for that sophomore year in football, they threw me the 12 jersey. Fine. I didn't think of myself as a little Roger Staubach, so I said, fine. Walk over to the basketball court, they throw me a 12 jersey. Well, I'll keep going. The baseball team, I walk over, they threw me a 12 jersey. Well, when you're in this league, you know, this pretty high-level league around Wichita, not the 6A schools, but
Right.
Goddard's a 5A school playing at a pretty high level. I became the number 12 guy because I played all 3 sports, sophomore year, junior year, senior year. By your senior year, you're pretty much either a marked man or a well-known figure. I mean,
Right.
they knew who I was because it seems like I'd been at Goddard for
A long
50
time.
years, and
Yeah.
I wore 12 in every sport. And if you played one of those 3 main sports, I was out there. So that's where it really became the number 12 thing. Not so much for Roger. That's a nice add-on, but it's
And
because
we'll,
this.
we'll
and
tell
still,
that story a little bit later,
and
too.
still, my children now, if they can, they all got number 12
Yes,
on, and then my nephew and my niece. So it's kind of become a little bit of a tradition. All started accidentally in my sophomore year when it said, "Hey, here's number 12."
What was the social life like for you at Goddard High School? You're a social person, but you're not a partier per se, and you're a pretty focused teenager as well. So what was your social life like?
Yeah, you know, it's fairly boring. First of all, the high school was a place where we went to school. Many of us drove 3 to 7 miles. They didn't allow us to leave for lunch to go anyplace else. We were self-contained. No one got off early out of class. So you were there from start to finish, and it was an unbelievable place in that there was a great respect for the teachers. I don't know how, but everyone seemed to respect the teachers, and then the coaches, and then the respect level that I experienced across the range of interest was really, now as a grown-up, really surprising that no one thought I was any better because I was good at sports, and no one made fun of each other.
No cliques, no in crowd, really?
You hung with your crowd. There's a little bit of that. I mean, I hung out with people who probably played sports more, but there was no negativity. When it came lunchtime, we all sat down and had a good time. I guess the best way I'd talk about it, to be most radical, is over the 4 years I was in the same high school, I never heard of or saw a fight. I mean, no physical punching, even no girls grabbing each other's hair or whatever might happen. It was, there may have been like, hey, I'm not like that person, or I wouldn't want to go hang out with them on a Friday night, but everyone got along, and it allowed us to concentrate well. So my life became pretty regimented, Danny. It was about trying to win the games. That was absolutely the first thing. Sure, I wanted to do well in school, but and I could concentrate when I was in class. There weren't distractions. We all got along. We had a great principal, great teachers, but it was mostly about the sport. So whenever you talk about any day of activity, you got to say how many days before the game is it, or something like that. So, Friday night football or basketball, or you can substitute Tuesday night basketball. That would take the attention of Monday and Tuesday night. But in a football rhythm, Friday night was giant. Thursday night was to rest. Monday night was to watch Monday Night Football for me because it was a new thing and it was the greatest thing ever. And Tuesday and Wednesday would fly by. We'd watch Happy Days on Thursday night or whatever it was. Everyone watched the same shows and talked about them at school. But Friday night after the game, fortunately we won almost every time when I was in high school. We would go to the same pizza place, and I don't know if it's 20 or 60 people, but everyone would know that's probably the place to go. It's interesting now when you think about it because 18-year-olds could drink beer. So,
right.
If the seniors, if they wanted to have a beer, they could have a beer with their pizza.
Right.
It was, no one cared. It's legal, and
right.
and let's go. So we do that. And then on Saturday night, usually I would end up by the evening, because at my house there was a lot of work to do, like go help your parents
right.
With the business, or at least help clean up the house. You really weren't off until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. There's a sporting event that I would usually take in, but about 5 or 6 at night on Saturday, it was, hey, what are we going to do? Well, a lot of people might group up and go with friends. Pretty much I had a girlfriend the whole time, the most serious one for basically my junior and senior year. So I would usually end up meeting her, and we'd go watch a movie or go to dinner and mostly come back and hang out at my house. So it was pretty regimented. I had fun, but most of it was at school. I didn't meet my friends outside other than, I guess you'd have to say, starting from when I was 8 years old and moving to Goddard, I met a group of friends who loved sports like I did. And whenever the parents would allow us to get together, we would play sports together, but we also would start playing board games. And I invented a number of games: a football game, a basketball game, a baseball game, and even a track game. And we would all play it together and compete. And we started being known as SBA, Stan, Brad, Austin. We were the first 3 to get going, and it has morphed into a much more intricate and intense one-game football that I still play with my grown-up all the way to my children's age kids. Almost every week we get together, and now it's called SFL. Someone else coined it, but I was with a buddy of mine from Goddard, and he goes, SBA, and I had my mind started spinning. SBA, that's right. It started out Stan, Brad, Austin, and it wasn't nearly as intricate a game, but we just competed playing board games or playing sports outside a lot. And that's kind of the kids until the girls came in about my sophomore year. Right. I started dating a junior year because the guys who were on the football team were all seniors, starters, and me, and they tried to include me in their group. And I said, well, I don't know if I want to hang out with you guys. I really don't. You guys drink beer. I'm not old enough, but hey, this girl thing's okay. So I started dating this junior girl, and so I realized, this is how you go to the movie, and this is how you go out to dinner. And it kind of just was the same routine throughout my high school.
You had a lot of success in all the sports, and you won a lot of games, most of your games. But there were some bogeymen out there to keep you from the highest heights in a couple of the sports, right?
So ironic that you mentioned that, because now I live in Kansas City, and my wife teaches at Bishop Miege High School, and all 4 of my kids went there. So what you have at Bishop Miege is not a 6A school, but a dominant athletic power. The schools like Lewisburg and Paola and Eudora, all these schools that dream of winning state championships, no matter how good they are, they can be undefeated all regular season. Miege comes in and wipes them out.
Right.
Beats them by 30 or 10 or whatever. They're just not used to the rigor that Miege is, because Miege is playing against the 6A state champions every week.
Right.
Well, it was Wichita, Cape, and Mount Carmel when I grew up. They were a school that was playing in the City League, and were the best City League school at most sports, football and basketball. And so Goddard would do well. We'd get rolling, get into the playoffs, and then run into Cape. And sure enough, I missed out on 3 state championships. I won 0, very important to state. It's not like everything went perfect. Didn't win any, but would have won 3 state championships. 2 in football and 1 in basketball if it wasn't for Cape and Mount Carmel. In my last basketball game, we were ranked number 1 in the whole state in basketball. Dave Tollifer, 6'5" guy, was a big guy as a point guard. We had a great senior class. We were rolling. hardly ever lost a game, won our league easily, went into the regional finals, didn't even get to go to state, and we ran into Capon, number 1 in the state. We were number 1, they were number 2, but they had Greg Dreiling, 7'2" star at Wichita State, and then KU. We weren't quite good enough, lost by a point there. So I went